Hi there, I'm Elane Noor Abdullah, bringing you the midday update broadcast live from my own home. Today, I'll be speaking to two very special guests. My first guest will be a molecular virologist. He is Dr. Vinod Balasubramaniam from Monash University, Malaysia. We're talking a little bit more about what we need to know about the COVID-19 virus. And my second guest later will be Azida Azmi. She is going to be speaking about the Young Women's Parliament, and she'll be representing the Sabah constituent. But I'll go on to the first story as we start the midday update. The Ministry of Health notes a rise in COVID-19 infections among pregnant women in Malaysia. Now, Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham says this is in line with the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases in Malaysia as a whole. According to the Health Director General, the percentage of pregnant women infected with COVID-19 in intensive care has increased from 3% on the 10th of July to 5.3% on the 7th of August. Next, the local government and housing minister, Dato' Masidi Manjun, says that Sabah government is ramping up vaccination in the state as an effort to achieve herd immunity by October. As of yesterday, 42% of Sabah residents have received their first dose of vaccination, while 18.4% have completed both shots. Now, according to Sabah COVID-19 spokesman, to boost the vaccination rate in the state, large companies are buying vaccines themselves to administer to their workers. Next, ramping up its inoculation drive, the Sabah government has decided to purchase its own COVID-19 vaccines to avoid any supply disruptions in the upcoming months. According to the Sabah COVID-19 spokesman, the decision was made based on information from sources indicating that there might be an interruption in supply of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to purchaser countries, including Malaysia. Now, the state government has decided to start buying its own vaccines in order to avoid possible shortfall, which could prevent achieving herd immunity in the targeted time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a guest that's coming to talk to us about COVID-19 and what we need to know. Joining me is molecular virologist, Dr. Vinod Balasubramaniam from the Monash University of Malaysia. It's been a while since we heard from a virologist, so we'll dive straight into this. Welcome to the show, Dr. Vinod. I'll go straight to the first question. It's been more than a year and a half. And what is virology learning about the COVID-19 virus? Tell us a little bit more about that, Dr.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thanks for having me. Important question, right? We are learning more about the virus. We are learning more about the defense mounted by our body. We are learning more of how the vaccines actually work and give us immunity, right? We know that SARS coronavirus mainly attacks the lungs in the beginning. It also attacks to a lesser degree to other organs, which expresses a specific receptor, which is called the ACE2, right? Such as the gastrointestinal system, kidneys, right? However, we know that respiratory dysfunction and failure are the major threat to the patients, right? And the major cause of death, right? Perhaps one of the most important lessons learned from COVID-19 is how our body mounts immune response against the virus, right? We know that the entire human population generally lacks immunity to the coronavirus, right? So everyone is susceptible to this virus, right? The majority of treatment currently being given, right? It centers around controlling the cytokine, an important protein involved in immunity, right? How? Why? Because it causes something which is called cytokine storm, right? Cytokine storm, it's a form of a systemic inflammatory response, right? Release of various cytokines, which clogs our respiratory system, right? And these cytokines induce immune cells, right? Which releases vast free radicals, which in turn, right, causes multiple organ failure, right? Now we are, looking at immunosuppression as an essential treatment against COVID-19 to reduce cytokine storms, especially in severe patients. This is something which is learned, something which is very new that we didn't know at the start of the pandemic, right? And one of the, perhaps the hallmarks of lesson, right? Vaccines remain the most effective tool for countering COVID-19, right? It remains potent for the most part at preventing severe illnesses and death from this disease, including mutant forms of the virus.
Now, Dr. Vinod, let's talk about the mutant forms, as you just mentioned. What is virologist's position on the Delta variant, and how are we going to, handle or navigate around the Delta variant?
So I can summarize Delta in one word: lethal, right? It's more contagious compared to all the other previous strains, right? We have data indicate that Delta is 40 to 60% more transmissible than the Alpha, and almost twice as transmissible uh, as the original Wuhan strain, right? And scientists have also found significant viral particles in the respiratory tract, airways of patients infected with Delta variant, right? Almost 1,000 times higher, right? This contributes to lethality and pathogenicity of the virus. We know that Delta is more dangerous compared to other variants, linking it to severe symptoms, hospitalizations, and also mortality higher when compared to other strains. And we also know that unvaccinated people are at the highest risk, because although majority of the vaccines produce immunity to a certain extent, unvaccinated people won't have any protection at all. And if you look at majority of cases, especially in Malaysia, the highest mortality rate belongs to groups which are not vaccinated. Now, how can we contain the Delta, right? Despite risks from the Delta, the overall public health strategy used throughout this pandemic remains effective. We should not forget that we already have the weapons. What are the weapons? Masks, social distancing, right? To reduce the risk of becoming infected, right? So it still should be our main goal to slow down the virus, right? By adhering to the existing hygiene and speeding up the vaccination process, right? And again, I want to make something clear here: getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is the strongest form of protection, right? While some vaccines may be less effective at blocking the infection from Delta, right? Many vaccines are so good at preventing diseases, right? In terms of severe symptoms and also hospitalization, right? We also should do mass testing to identify potential asymptomatic spreaders, right? Who might be infected with Delta, especially those who are vaccinated. We know that even vaccinated people can be infected by the Delta, right? And also, mass sequencing of the genomes in Malaysia, especially, right,
Right.
to identify which strain is the dominant strain.
So, because right now it's a Delta variant, and the mutation doesn't mean that it will stop here. That there's potential for further mutation as well as the pandemic expands further. So, this means this will be an ongoing struggle for the global community. Let's talk about what has been being brought up quite a bit. We talk about ivermectin. The word ivermectin has been bandied around. It's a simple sort of oral medication. There are many different points of views with regards to this. What is yours, Dr. Vinod? Tell us.
And this is a little bit tricky because ivermectin now has been touted as the miracle drug, as the savior against COVID-19. I mean, I'm pretty sure you have, getting a lot of WhatsApp messages showing efficacy of ivermectin by the public, right? Now, this started off with an in vitro study, right, using cell lines in Monash University, demonstrating that ivermectin actually reduced the coronavirus replication by 5,000, close to 5,000 folds in 2 days, right? Ever since the paper was out, right, some of the countries actually proved off-label use of ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19, right? And to date, if you look at the use of ivermectin in terms of in research, right, there are many reports being published, right, with some at various stages, right? And some of these reports use randomized controlled trials, right? Randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, are gold standard in evidence-based medicine, right? However, we must understand something here, that most of these studies could not demonstrate whether the drug is effective, right? If you look at majority of the RCT studies, it is very small, right? Small number of patients, right? Ranging from 20 to 400, right? And the methods used is questionable, right? And one thing which is notable is that none of these studies, right, RCTs or meta-analysis, resulted in conclusion with high certainty evidence. Now, what can we take from here, right? What we could learn from this ivermectin issue is that evidence-based medicine should rely on high quality evidence. So there's simply not enough evidence to show the efficacy of ivermectin, right? Which is why we are having trials in Malaysia currently. So I would suggest that we wait and see how the results come out.
Okay, so it is still being discussed or being
Absolutely.
investigated with the trials, and hopefully this would eventually, hopefully, be the miracle drug. Who knows? I mean, that would be the perfect solution. But at this
Absolutely.
point in time, let's talk about the novel coronavirus. Of course, there's a lot of hearsay, myths, said it was engineered in a lab, and of course, the fingers are pointing to China. This myth started about mid last year. We spoke to a science journalist, Deborah McKenzie, and she said that if scientists wanted to manufacture a virus, they wouldn't know how. Your thoughts on this? Will perhaps you can quickly tell us a little bit more of your thoughts on this?
Um, I would kindly disagree with that because with the advancement of technology, especially in molecular virology, right, using reverse genetics, we pretty much can manufacture any viruses that we want, right? All we need are the sequences for the viruses. But I'm not suggesting that the virus was purposely manufactured, was purposely released out of the lab, right? Simply because, right, people are linking the Wuhan strain as an act of bioterrorism, right? I want to stress something important here that Mother Nature is actually the best bioterrorist, right? Now we have seen this time and time again as new diseases have emerged, right? Look at Ebola, look at SARS, the first SARS, look at Hanipa virus, right? Although there are a lot of conspiracy theories suggesting that it might be manufactured, right? Now, I would like to believe that it's basically an infectious coronavirus that spilled over from bats into a population that has already experienced a previous spillover events from related virus,
I
right?
agree. I think
Yeah, yeah,
you nailed it on the head when you said Mother Nature is the biggest bioterrorist. That
yeah,
sums
yeah.
it up pretty much. Now I'll go on to the final question because we're running out of time. COVID
Sure,
19
sure.
is no worse than the flu. A large number of people still believe this. Can you put some context to this?
I understand where people are getting to this because some of the symptoms like pneumonia, respiratory failure, you look at ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, similar to flu. But people must understand one thing, right? The disease is caused by a new virus, which is not found yet, right? And the vast majority of people do not have immunity towards it. Now, what does that lead to? Leads to higher mortality because we simply don't have immunity against it, right? And we also must understand that COVID-19 is linked with additional health issues that was not seen in the flu, such as blood clots in the lungs, heart, legs, brain, and certain complications seem worse with COVID-19 when compared to flu, right? Because if you look at when you compare flu and COVID-19 patients, that there were studies showing that COVID-19 patients have 19 times higher risk of developing acute respiratory distress syndrome when compared to flu. And there are also higher mortality when you compare to some of the common strains of flu, right? And COVID-19 also shows something which is called long COVID, right? And there's also a growing group of this long COVID, or also known as COVID-19 long haulers, right? They have recovered from COVID-19 infection, but they still have lingering symptoms, right? You are looking at chronic fatigue, brain fog, brain and shortness of breath,
So,
right? So
in summary, Doc, I just have to say that we have run out of time, but it
sure,
is not the same as the flu. It is
definitely.
it is still something that we need to be able to fight because we don't have the immunity for it. Thank you so much, Doc,
Thank
for
you.
sharing that with us, and hopefully we've sort of enlightened and dispelled some myths to the public out there. That was, of course, molecular virologist Dr. Vinod Balasubramaniam coming to us, talking to us about COVID-19 and what are the things that we should know. Now, moving on to the next story, Deputy Youth and Sports Minister Wan Ahmad Fayhsal, Wan Ahmad Kamal said the findings from studies carried out by the Institute of Youth Research Malaysia 2020 and the Youth Data Hub play a role in ensuring the direction of the country's youth is on the right track. Now, these 5 findings are the Malaysian youth landscape, Malaysian youth index perspective, Malaysian sports culture trends during the COVID-19 pandemic, the inability of youth to compete in the economic sector, upskilling and reskilling study for better employment opportunities among youth and national youth aspirations. Now, as we speak about youth, we bring on another guest. Young Women's Parliament is ongoing with 222 young delegates debating policies on women issues, gender equality, social issues, and more in a bit to encourage more female participation in politics as well as policy making. Now, organized by the Malaysia Young Generation, or MyGen, this program, which will run virtually from the 14th and 5th to the 15th of August, involves young women aged 15 to 30 from a variety of backgrounds, including students, orang asli representatives, those with disabilities, as well as activists. The program director, Dr. Shatish Kumar Sangar, says that besides giving delegates exposure to policy making, it also serves as a platform for young women to broaden their potential to take on future leadership roles. And I bring on my special guest today, Azida Azmi, speaking about Young Women's Parliament representing Sabah. Hi, welcome Azida. Let's talk about the Young Women's Parliament. Now I go straight to the first question, Azida. Young Women's Parliament is ongoing as we speak, and the main conference is over the weekend. What are the main topics that are going to be discussed during this session?
All right. So first of all, hi Elane. Thank you so much for having me and thanks for asking. So this weekend we have two very critical topics that will be discussed, which I am very, very passionate about. So the platform is an effort to not only amplify women voices, but also to give back what has long been taken away from women. I grew up being told by people that I shouldn't be so loud because I'll be seen as aggressive or unfeminine, right? But in Parliament Wanita Muda, we are able to use our voice in a platform where the first topic that will be discussed is about urging the government to act quickly to address the growing number of domestic violence cases caused by patriarchy and misogyny. And the second topic is about pressuring the government to present the sexual harassment bill and specific policies to combat sexual harassment. As a long-time advocate of sexual violence, right, I believe that there is a sense of urgency to talk about these issues, and failing to respond to sexual harassment and sexual violence, it can impede the nation's advancements because you are preserving the status quo and the imbalanced power that drives sexual harassment and sexual violence in the first place.
Now, of course, in 2021, we would have wished that this is not something that we still have to continually fight for. You know, women would have an equal say, equal right. Domestic violence would not be something that's on the rise, but it is still the case. Now, besides that main agenda, of course, there are also various side programs to train delegates, including a parliamentary preparation workshop by NGOs or non-governmental organizations called Reform Malaysia, webinar series on women's issues. Can you walk us a little bit through this?
Sure, I would love to. So when we were first recruited, we were separated into groups of 14 to 15 members, and each group had a mentor. So the mentors were women that I have looked up to my whole life, YB Nurul Izzah and Dr. Wan Aziza, for example. So each group will meet their mentors, so they are given insights about how parliament works and what is politics all about. And we also had a parliamentary preparation workshop hosted by a non-governmental organization, Reform Malaysia. And I think this was such an eye-opening experience, especially for those who never had that privilege of being part of such conversations, you know. So not only that, the team has also organized a bunch of beneficial webinars where they invited a lot of guest speakers such as Miss Galvita Gulhati. She's among the 30 youngest innovators in Asia under the age of 30. And we also have like the founder of Women Igniting Change and even Tan Sri Shahrizad. So some of the topics were women's health, women in STEM, and a lot more. And I think I lost count. But the webinar series had various topics which were great effort because the speakers mainly emphasized on our roles as women and what we can do to take charge of our lives. And aside from those sessions organized by the Secretariat, my group members also held our own personal discussion among each other. We talked about issues like domestic violence and the importance of education in a woman's life. It was a safe space. We talked about personal experiences and what we can do to not let other women experience them.
Now, today is International Youth Day. As a Malaysian youth who is on the ground running projects and as the president of the Malaysian Relief Agency, or MRA Siswa, what are some of your thoughts on International Youth Day, especially with a long-drawn pandemic and the future of youth? These are challenging times. Tell us.
All right, thank you. I think the theme for this year's International Youth Day is definitely a critical theme to highlight. After almost 2 years of lockdowns and losses, this pandemic has taken a toll on everyone's mental health, especially our youth. In fact, I did a research a few days ago, and researchers have indicated that our youth are disproportionately affected and are more prone to mental health issues. I've watched my peers talk about giving up their studies and jobs because they can no longer afford to be positive and have hope about the future, right? And every time I hear them say that, I become stunned because I don't know what to say because I'm going through the same thing. This pandemic has not only robbed our lives, but it has taken away a lot of opportunities that could have helped us improve our lives. And I believe more than anything that this pandemic has unraveled the intricate flaws of the system that we abide by every day. And the youth has without a doubt become one of the most critical victim of such system, as we are dismissed of our struggles and we are not able to do a lot of things. Yeah.
Now we running time, so let me go to the last question. What is your advice to Malaysian youth and how they can make Malaysia better?
All right, my advice is that to answer your question on how youths can make Malaysia a better place, I'll start with this quote that resonates deeply with me, which is be the change you wish to see in the world. It is an advice that I always suggest to the people around me. If you have the privilege or platform to be able to do something, utilize it and help the people around you. Grab a lot of opportunities. We have so many NGOs, for example, Malaysian Relief Agency, MRA Siswa. We're an organization that aims to instill altruistic values in our Malaysian youth. So, be part of those volunteering work and don't just don't just watch the opportunity just pass by you. I'm a firm believer of this quote, knowledge is power. And I'm not just talking about tertiary education, even though that's a good place to start, but I'm talking about understanding your legal rights and whatever that's happening around you. I believe that when we the youth equip ourselves with knowledge and become a student of life, we can face any hurdles that will hit us in the future. So
Thank you.
keep boundaries. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Azida, for sharing. I wish you all the best. I look forward to seeing you on the field and, sort of like driving that path forward for all the youth in general. That was, of course, Azida talking to us about the Young Women's Parliament that's currently happening as we speak. The theme of the International Youth Day 2021 is transforming food systems, youth innovation for human and planetary health. Now, moving on, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri yesterday urged the authorities to take necessary measures to prevent overcrowding at vaccination centres, and the Deputy Prime Minister expresses that he was shocked after seeing video clips on social media. He hopes the authorities can ensure that the situation of overcrowding of foreign workers does not repeat and will take measures to address this issue immediately. Now, right after this, I'm also bringing on my colleague Gerard, who will bring us some stories from the international front. Gerard, over to you as we listen to some international stories.
Thank you very much, Elane. Certainly hope you are having a lovely day at home. But let's take a look at what's happening internationally. Now, the World Health Organization, they've had a lot to say in the past week, and they've urged 20 leaders with the power to overturn the disgraceful global imbalance. I'll repeat that, the disgraceful global imbalance in access to COVID-19 vaccines, and this is to reverse the tide by October. Now, the UN Health Agency has been increasingly infuriated by what it sees as the moral outrage of rich countries hogging vaccine supply while developing nations struggle to immunize their populations. A little note here, WHO wants every country to have vaccinated at least 10% of its population by the end of September, and at least another 40% by the end of this year, and 70% by the middle of 2022. That's what they want to see, and they're hoping that people will, or rather countries will follow suit. Now, still with WHO, they have announced that they will test 3 new drugs for COVID-19, which will involve thousands of researchers at more than 600 hospitals in 52 countries. There's a little bit of a silver lining there. Now, the sad news this week is what's happening in Afghanistan. Apparently, Taliban fighters could isolate Afghanistan's capital in 30 days and possibly take it over in 90. And this was said by the US defense official. All this is happening as militants took control of an 8-provincial Afghan capital. Now, the loss of Faizabad, or the capital of the northeastern province of Badakhshan, was the latest setback for the Afghan government, struggling to stem the momentum of Taliban assaults as US-led foreign forces start to leave the country. And another sad story here, authorities in Myanmar currently have no plan to include the minority Rohingya Muslims living in the densely packed camps as they begin vaccinating priority groups in the western Rakhine state. Thousands of Rohingya fled to Bangladesh during military operations back in 2017. I don't even remember that, and still remain as a complaint of discrimination and mistreatment in a country that doesn't recognize them as citizens. Well, that's all I have for you right now in our international segment. It's back to you, Elane.
Just in, Australia's capital Canberra was ordered into a 7-day lockdown Thursday after a single COVID-19 case was detected in the city that has largely avoided virus restrictions. Of course, that was the international news, but I'll go to some trending topics on Twitter. Hashtag Super Cup. Football fans and supporters have been going wild over the victory of Chelsea in the 2021 UEFA Super Cup earlier today. And of course, the next trending topic was Sir Shakib, a group of online tutors led by Sir Shakib went viral on Twitter over their voluntary effort in placing lines and cones outside of the Grand Seasons Hotel PPV last night to help with social distancing. And that, of course, wraps up the midday update. Get vaccinated, wear a mask, saves lives, keep each other safe. That's all from me, Elane, Noor Abdullah, here from my home studio. Bye for now.